People all the time ask me about the iconic cars in this mythology. When I think of the Dodge Charger, I think of that moment from the first film in the Toretto garage where Dom and Brian...
Vin Diesel has always kept one part of his life locked away. Not the fame, not the films, but something much more personal. When the doors to his private garage finally opened, what people found inside wasn't just rare. It was emotional, strange, and completely unexpected. Cars tied to tragedy, custom gifts, hidden memories, even one car that only 7 people on Earth can own. This isn't just a garage, it's a secret. And what's hiding inside will leave you stunned, because one car changes everything. Let's discover. Section 1. The Man Behind the Machine. Vin Diesel isn't who you think he is. Sure, you've seen him behind the wheel, racing through skyscrapers or launching muscle cars off cliffs. You know the growl, the muscles, the word family echoing through the Fast and Furious franchise like a war cry. But what if I told you that behind all of that cinematic chaos is a man who takes his engines personally? That under the on-screen explosions and burnt rubber, Vin Diesel has been quietly building something much more intimate and much more surprising? What does a man like that keep hidden in his garage? And what do those cars say about the real Vin Diesel? Before there was Dom Toretto, there was Mark Sinclair. That's Vin Diesel's real name. Born in Alameda County, raised in New York City by a working-class family. He grew up around artists and outsiders, not million-dollar cars. His first job wasn't acting, it was bouncer at a nightclub. His first shot at directing came only after he raised the money himself and filmed his debut short on a shoestring budget. Diesel didn't walk into fame. He built it piece by piece, just like he would one of his beloved muscle cars. And once the Fast and the Furious launched him into global stardom, he didn't just accept the role of Dominic Toretto, he rewrote it to reflect something deeper. So here's the first twist. Vin Diesel didn't just play Dom, he became him, or maybe the other way around. In interviews, Diesel has admitted that he influenced the direction of the character from early on, insisting on more emotional depth, more personal stakes, and, most importantly, more cars that mattered. Unlike a lot of Hollywood actors who just show up and drive whatever's flashy, Diesel, as a producer on the franchise, had a say in the garage. The 1970 Dodge Charger wasn't picked because it looked good. It was picked because it had soul. That's how Diesel talks about vehicles, not in numbers, but in feelings. It's this merging of identity between man and character that explains why his real-life garage looks like a deleted scene from the movies. But it's not just a collection of prop cars. It's not some billionaire's cold showroom. Diesel's cars come with fingerprints, grease, and meaning. You won't find a plaque next to each vehicle, but you will find stories. The Charger, Chevelle, the Supra, they're not trophies. They're markers of moments, both in his career and in his life. And here's what most people miss. Vin Diesel's love for cars didn't start with Fast and Furious. It was already there. Quiet, obsessive, personal. He's the kind of guy who doesn't just drive a car, he studies it. He'll tell you what's under the hood, how it handles under pressure, what the torque feels like when you hit the gas at the right moment. To him, machines aren't machines. They're conversations. They talk back. They remind him of something, how far he's come and how close he's still trying to stay to where he began. What's most fascinating, and what no one saw coming, is how that garage has slowly filled up with cars that have nothing to do with the films. A handful, sure, were on screen. The 1970 Chevelle SS, the Lycan Hypersport from Furious 7, the restored Dodge Charger Tantrum. But others, they were never part of the franchise at all. The 1960 Pontiac Bonneville, the 1993 Mazda RX-7, the Subaru Impreza, a Sprinter van with a built-in fridge and TV, gifted by Tyrese Gibson. These weren't chosen by scriptwriters, they were chosen by Vin. Quietly, without cameras, without stunts. And in many ways, they're even more revealing than the movie cars. So when people say they opened Vin Diesel's garage and were shocked by what they found, they're not just talking about horsepower, they're talking about who Diesel really is when the engine's off and the cameras stop rolling. He's a man who built his identity through movies, yes, but also through metal, grease, and grit. And now that the doors to his private garage have finally opened, we're not just seeing what he drives, we're seeing what he values. And that's just the beginning. Section 2. Inside the garage. They didn't just open Vin Diesel's garage, they uncovered something no one in Hollywood was prepared for. This wasn't some flashy photo op or curated showroom display. What they found was raw, overwhelming, and completely real. The man who's spent more than 2 decades making movies about high-speed races, exploding engines, and souped-up street battles has quietly built a garage that's just as extreme as the films he stars in. But here's the twist. Some of the cars are iconic, instantly recognizable from the screen. Others have never been seen by the public until now. And each one, whether famous or forgotten, tells you something crucial about the man who owns them. Why does Diesel keep the Chevelle SS in pristine condition but barely mentions it? Why does he hold on to a Supra that never even made it into his scenes? And what kind of person buys a car with diamonds in the headlights? You don't walk into Vin Diesel's garage the way you'd walk into a showroom. There's no one handing you a brochure. There's no neat little velvet rope telling you where to stand. What you get instead is something much more intimate. Each corner of the garage has a purpose. Some areas reserved for active tuning and maintenance, others more like quiet shrines to cars that clearly hold deep personal meaning. One side is dominated by the movie legends, the muscle cars, the hypercars. The builds fans have memorized frame by frame. The other side? That's where things get interesting. That's where the vehicles live that never made it into a fast and furious frame, but still reflect Diesel's life, his values, his relationships. We start with the 1970 Chevrolet Chevelle SS, a car that isn't just Diesel's favorite, it's practically an extension of who he is. You've seen it in Fast and Furious, in Fast 5, and briefly in Fast and Furious 6. Dom drives a heavily modified version of it in a street race, and the car later reappears in flashbacks and dramatic sequences throughout the series. But for Diesel, the Chevelle isn't just a piece of movie hardware. In an interview, he once joked about stealing one from the set, a perk, he said, of being both the lead actor and a producer. He grinned when he said it, but you could tell he wasn't really joking. The one he owns in real life isn't loaded with flashy decals or CGI polish. It's stripped down, clean, pure. Under the hood, a 7.5-liter V8 engine capable of 450 horsepower and 500 pound-feet of torque. That kind of torque means the car has massive pulling power, especially at lower speeds, making it perfect for quick acceleration. And it shows. This thing can go from 0 to 60 in under 5 seconds. That's faster than many modern sports cars, despite the Chevelle's age and heavy frame. In its time, it was one of the fastest accelerating muscle cars ever made, and Diesel's real-world version is meticulously maintained. But the Chevelle isn't flashy. That's the point. It's powerful, grounded, and almost stubbornly old school, just like the man who owns it. The fact that it's Diesel's favorite says a lot. It's not the most expensive in the garage, and it's not the rarest, but it's got heart. And for Diesel, that matters more than bragging rights. Then there's the 1994 Toyota Supra. To the average viewer, it's just the car from the first film, the one Brian, Paul Walker, brings to Dom's garage as a kind of peace offering. But for Diesel, the Supra means something else entirely. It's not an exact replica of the car from the movie. It doesn't have the bright orange paint job, and it doesn't sport the same racing mods. In fact, it's fairly understated, almost deliberately so. Why? Because Diesel doesn't keep it as a showpiece. He keeps it as a memory. The Supra was Paul Walker's car. In the world of Fast and Furious, sure, but also in real life. Walker loved that model. The one he drove in the movie had a 3-liter inline-6 engine with twin turbochargers pushing 321 horsepower and 315 pound-feet of torque. For its time, that was impressive, especially considering the Supra's heavier frame. In the film, it went from junkyard scrap to a street racing monster. Off-screen, it became a symbol. After Paul Walker's tragic death in 2013, the Supra became a tribute. One of the originals used in filming sold at auction for over $500,000, a staggering number for a car that originally retailed for around $40,000. But Diesel's version, it probably wouldn't fetch that much at auction. And that's the point. He doesn't keep it for its price. He keeps it because it reminds him of his friend, because it reminds him of why Fast and Furious isn't just about action scenes. It's about connection. And then we come to the Lykan Hypersport, the most expensive car in the entire collection. Only 7 of them were ever made. Diesel owns one. Think about that for a second. There are more Fast and Furious movies than there are Lykan Hypersports in existence. This car costs $3.8 million. That's not a typo. It's the 3rd most expensive production car in history, and for good reason. Under the hood is a 3.7-liter twin-turbo flat-6 engine, capable of 780 horsepower and 708 pound-feet of torque. It goes from 0 to 60 in 2.8 seconds and can hit a top speed of 245 miles per hour. That's performance on the level of Formula One race cars. But speed isn't even the most insane part. The headlights are lined with diamonds. The seats are stitched with gold. The interior materials can be customized to include rubies, sapphires, even platinum, depending on the owner's preferences. In other words, it's less of a car and more of a concept piece, a billionaire's fever dream brought to life. Diesel's version, like everything else in his garage, is customized, but he's never publicly revealed what kind of jewels he chose. Maybe he thought it was too indulgent to talk about. Maybe he wanted to keep something private. What we do know is this. A Lykan Hypersport was featured in Furious 7, in one of the most surreal scenes of the franchise, when Dom and Brian drive it from one Abu Dhabi skyscraper to another, and then to another. That car, of course, was a stunt duplicate made of cheaper materials. But Diesel owns the real thing. And unlike in the movie, his isn't going to get launched out of a 20-story window. Still, even among all these one-of-a-kind machines, one car stands out for how quietly it commands attention. The 1969 Dodge Charger Daytona. Only 503 of these cars were ever built. Diesel's version has been restored to near perfection, and it's one of the few cars in his garage that actually gets more beautiful the closer you look. The Daytona wasn't just any car. It was NASCAR ready from the factory. It came with a massive rear wing, a pointed aerodynamic nose, and a design that broke speed records when it debuted. The wing wasn't just for looks. It was an engineering breakthrough. At high speeds, it stabilized the car, preventing rear-end lift and allowing it to hug the track at over 200 miles per hour. And yes, it could hit that number. This wasn't movie magic. It was math, physics, and raw American engineering. The fact that Diesel has one and that it doesn't feature prominently in the films tells you something. It tells you that not every car in his collection is there to be seen. Some are there because he appreciates the science behind them, because he knows what they meant to automotive history, because he respects what they were built to do. All of these cars, whether they're worth $500,000 or several million, serve a different purpose than what people expect. For most collectors, rarity and resale value are the name of the game. For Diesel, it's about identity. It's about memory. It's about emotion. Some cars remind him of Paul. Others remind him of how far he's come. Still others remind him of the kind of machines that defined an era, when driving was about feeling the road, not watching a screen. So when people get a chance to peek into this garage for the first time, they're not just looking at steel and leather. They're looking at a kind of autobiography, written not with words but with engines, frames, and horsepower. The shock doesn't come from the price tags. It comes from how deliberate the collection is, how each car has a place, a reason, a meaning. It's not a museum. It's not a showroom. It's a workshop, a memory bank, a space where story and machine collide. Section 3. Hidden Gems and Unexpected Rides. If you thought Vin Diesel's garage was only filled with million-dollar hypercars and Fast and Furious legends, think again, because hidden behind the roaring V8s and cinematic muscle is a completely different collection. Quieter, stranger, and in some cases, shockingly practical. These are the cars that never made it to the screen, the ones you don't see parked under spotlight lighting or revving down CGI-enhanced highways. But they tell a side of Diesel that fans rarely get to see. What kind of car does an action star actually drive when he's not filming? What kind of machine does a man like Diesel choose when it's not about speed, but about life? Let's start with a monster, the 1960 Pontiac Bonneville. This isn't the kind of car you race. It's the kind of car you pilot. Nearly 20 feet long from bumper to bumper, the Bonneville is an enormous piece of American engineering from a time when "bigger is better" wasn't a marketing slogan. It was a design principle. This isn't some delicate collector's piece. It's built like a rolling tank, with wide fenders, massive chrome accents, and enough seating space to fit half the cast of Fast and Furious. When it was released, it was considered one of the most luxurious full-size sedans in the United States, offering power windows, automatic transmission, and a high-compression V8 engine. In its day, the Bonneville was a symbol of prestige and comfort, a car for people who wanted to cruise in style without sacrificing performance. Today, it's a forgotten beast. Most people under 40 have never even heard of it, but Vin Diesel owns one. Why? Because it's not about relevance, it's about presence. The Bonneville has a kind of authority that few modern cars can match. It doesn't have to go fast. It just exists, like a piece of sculpture with an engine. Diesel's version has been restored, but not overly polished. The lines of wear are still visible. The interior has aged, but comfortably. It's the kind of car you sit in when you want to remember how cars used to feel. Heavy, deliberate, unapologetically wide. No touch screens, no Bluetooth, just chrome, steel, and weight. It's a car that asks you to slow down, and for someone like Diesel, who lives in a high-speed industry, that's exactly the point. Then there's the 1970 Plymouth Barracuda. This one doesn't get nearly as much attention as the Charger or the Chevelle, but for muscle car enthusiasts, the Cuda is an icon. It was one of the first pony cars to go head-to-head with the Ford Mustang and the Chevy Camaro, and over time, it developed a cult following. With its aggressive stance, sweeping fastback lines, and rumbling exhaust, the Barracuda was born to intimidate. Under the hood, Diesel's model reportedly houses a big block 426 Hemi engine, nicknamed the Elephant because of its size and output. That engine alone is a reason to own the car. It pushes over 425 horsepower and was one of the first production V8s to break into race car territory. But Diesel's Cuda isn't all about brute force. It's a callback to a time when styling was as important as performance. The way the hood scoops blend into the front grille, the symmetry of the rear panels, the way the windows taper into the roofline, it's all intentional. This is a car designed to be seen, but not necessarily recognized. Most people watching a Fast and Furious movie wouldn't even clock it, but real gearheads know exactly what it is. And then we move to something very different, the 1993 Mazda RX-7. Now, this one does have ties to the Fast franchise, especially if you count Dom's drift-heavy appearances or the influence of Tokyo street racing in later films. But Diesel's RX-7 isn't a movie prop. It's a personal nod to a different kind of speed. The RX-7 is known for its Wankel rotary engine, a unique design that doesn't use traditional pistons, but instead relies on a spinning rotor. That design gives it high revs and a distinctively smooth, almost alien sound. The RX-7 is light, nimble, and extremely responsive. It's the opposite of a muscle car. Where a Dodge Charger growls and lunges, the RX-7 glides and flicks. It's a car built for agility, not brute strength. Why would Diesel own something like that? Because he respects engineering. Because he understands that speed isn't one-dimensional. The RX-7 represents a different school of thought. Japanese minimalism versus American dominance. It also doesn't hurt that the RX-7 has a massive modding community. Owners love to tweak, tune, and completely overhaul them. And knowing Diesel's appreciation for hands-on mechanics, it's very likely his version isn't stock. But perhaps the most surprising part of Vin Diesel's garage isn't any of the muscle or tuner cars, it's the practical vehicles. Yes, practical. The ones you don't associate with Dom Toretto at all. The ones you'd never expect to see parked next to a Lykan Hypersport or a Dodge Daytona. And yet, they're there. The 2010 BMW M5, for example. Sleek, understated, businesslike. With a V10 engine under the hood, it still produces 500 horsepower and can hit 0 to 60 in around 4 seconds. But this isn't a showpiece. It's a commuter car for people who enjoy performance but don't want attention. It's what you drive when you want to disappear into the background quickly. Then there's the 2009 Subaru Impreza. This is a curious choice. It's a great all-wheel drive car, known for its durability, traction, and safety. It's the kind of car that dominates rally racing circuits, but also gets groceries on weekdays. For someone like Diesel, it makes sense. He's a father. He's a godfather. He's constantly traveling between sets, meetings, and family commitments. You need something reliable, discreet, and comfortable. The Impreza checks all those boxes. The Range Rover is a similar story. It's not about flash, it's about flexibility. The Range Rover is a similar story. It's not about flash, it's about flexibility. Diesel's version has the classic black-on-black trim, leather interior, and plenty of off-road capability. It's the kind of vehicle you can take to a red carpet event one day and through mud the next. It rides high, commands the road, and keeps a low profile all at once. That combination is rare, and clearly Diesel values that kind of duality in his personal life. But the most surprising vehicle in his garage might be the Mercedes-Benz Sprinter van. Yes, a van. Not a vintage one, not a custom lowrider. A practical, tall, silver van. Why? Because it was a gift. Tyrese Gibson, Diesel's longtime co-star and real-life friend, gave it to him for his birthday. But this isn't just any van. Tyrese customized it himself, outfitting it with a full entertainment system, plush, leather seating, a refrigerator, and a flat-screen TV. It's part mobile lounge, part tour bus, part office. Diesel reportedly uses it on longer filming days or when traveling with his children. It's a gift that reflects their friendship, sure, but it also reflects the practical side of a man people only associate with high-speed chases. All of these vehicles, every last one, paint a fuller picture of who Vin Diesel really is. Yes, he's the guy who races muscle cars through collapsing parking garages. But he's also a father, a producer, a quiet observer of mechanical craft. The Bonneville shows his respect for forgotten power. The Barracuda reveals his eye for beauty and rarity. The RX-7 speaks to his love of precision. The BMW, the Subaru, the Sprinter van, those show a man who lives in the real world too. A man who has to get from place to place without drawing a crowd. Section 4. More Than Metal. The Paul Walker Legacy. There's a section of Vin Diesel's garage that most people never get to see, not because it's hidden behind security or locked with biometric codes, but because it's quiet, it's personal, it's heavy in ways that can't be measured in torque or top speed. These aren't the cars that roar down the street or spin into flames for a stunt sequence. These are the ones that sit still, that hold weight. Because they don't just belong to Diesel, they belong to someone who's no longer here. Why would a man keep a Toyota Supra that he never races? Why preserve a Dodge Charger that hasn't been touched in years? The answer has nothing to do with horsepower. It has everything to do with Paul Walker. When Paul Walker died in November 2013, it wasn't just a loss to Hollywood or the Fast and Furious franchise. For Vin Diesel, it was something far more personal. Walker wasn't just a co-star, he was family. The two had worked together for over a decade by that point. Their on-screen chemistry as Dom and Brian was built on a real-life friendship, one that developed off-set, in between takes, through long conversations, shared jokes, and mutual respect. And when that friendship was suddenly cut short, Diesel didn't just grieve, he changed. In interviews following Walker's death, Diesel struggled to hold back emotion. He's not someone who opens up easily, but this was different. He called Walker his brother, and he meant it. During the filming of Furious 7, Diesel admitted he would sometimes walk off set to cry. He talked about seeing reminders of Walker everywhere, especially in the cars. Because the cars weren't just props. They were part of their shared world. The most famous of these is the 1994 Toyota Supra. In the first Fast and the Furious movie, Walker's character Brian O'Connor rebuilds a rusted-out Supra as a kind of peace offering to Dom. It becomes their car, their bridge, and by the end of the film, it's the car Brian gives to Dom, helping him escape. That moment is iconic now, but back then, it was just good storytelling. Two gearheads earning each other's respect through metal and grit. Diesel never forgot that. And though he didn't drive that Supra himself, he keeps one in his personal garage today. Not modified, not painted orange like in the movie, not polished for display, just remembered. It's not the only car in his collection tied to Paul. The Dodge Charger, Dom's signature ride, is also there. In some versions, it's heavily modified, built for explosions and airborne stunts. But in Diesel's garage, there's a version that doesn't get driven. It's clean, covered when not in use, and parked with care. Because that Charger wasn't just Dom's, it was part of Diesel and Walker's shared legacy. The films were never really about the cars. They were about what the cars represented. Loyalty, brotherhood, sacrifice. And that idea continues far beyond the vehicles. Diesel is godfather to Meadow Walker, Paul's daughter. He didn't take the role lightly. In fact, he treats her as part of his own family. On her wedding day, it was Diesel who walked her down the aisle. Not for publicity, not for show, but because that's what family does. And to honor Paul further, Diesel named his youngest daughter Pauline. Not in passing, not as a middle name. Her name is a daily reminder of someone who changed his life. In the years following Walker's death, Diesel developed a set of personal rituals, ways of remembering, of honoring, of keeping Paul present. He often visits the garage alone, especially before new Fast and Furious productions begin. He checks on the cars, makes sure the Supra is clean, runs his hands along the Charger's hood. He has said that, in those quiet moments, he talks to Paul. Whether you believe in that or not isn't the point. What matters is that for Diesel, the cars are the conversations. Even the Fast and Furious films themselves became vehicles for tribute. After Paul's death, the franchise could have gone in a different direction. More explosions, new stars, commercial pivots. But Diesel insisted on keeping Brian's memory alive. In Furious 7, the closing scene doesn't end with a chase or a crash. It ends with two cars, Dom's and Brian's, pulling away from each other on a sunlit road. The camera lingers. There are no words, just a drive. And that scene, written and finalized with Diesel's input, was more than a cinematic goodbye. It was real. It was personal. It's not just about keeping a Supra in the garage. It's about preserving the feeling of that final drive, the sense that something mattered, that someone mattered. Diesel has said that every film since Furious 7 includes Paul in some way, whether fans notice it or not. Sometimes it's a character's name. Sometimes it's a reference in the dialogue. Sometimes it's in the music, but it's always there. And that's why these cars aren't just vehicles. They're not investments. They're not status symbols. They're memorials on wheels, machines that hold memory. Diesel doesn't collect these because they're rare. He collects them because they're sacred. He doesn't show them off. he protects them. There are also lesser-known gestures, things Diesel has never fully publicized. During certain anniversaries, he's known to light a candle in the garage and spend time alone with the vehicles connected to Paul. He's reportedly kept handwritten notes between himself and Walker, some tucked into glove compartments. One source close to Diesel described finding a photo of Paul folded neatly in the visor of the Charger. Old, faded, but still there. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Click the next video for more exciting content.